Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Goat's Eye View, where we are going to be explaining D&D 5e for kids, those mysterious little creatures that I do not understand, featuring Rachel, who does understand those mysterious little creatures. My name is Galway Trainer. I am the unbenevolent dictator of Helpful Goat Gaming, and with me today is our good friend Rachel. You have heard her in actually a bunch of our streams at this point, where you can talk. It's
Nope,
you're,
silent.
you're just like nodding at me slowly.
I'm
Like,
being nice and not interrupting you,
okay.
except I just interrupted you, so.
With explicative of you're not interrupting me. I'm trying to think. You were in the
I
most recent
did
tier.
Dead Channel with Elise.
Dead Channel with Elise.
I was one of the Aryans in the 3 Versions myths.
Yep.
I did do Spire. And I was in tier Amberheart.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm wiggling my fingers so much.
You were the source of our greatest joy of sweet pea. Gotta eat pea.
Pull.
So yeah, we Lena in chat. I interrupt him constantly. It's okay. Just realized having her in chat for these, that's a dangerous incident. But yeah, we are Helpful Goat Gaming. We are a small independent game design firm and game content creation firm. We are stream pretty regularly, multiple times a week here on Twitch. Right now, our current schedule is Tuesdays. We do the Goat's Eye View, which are interviews, sort of looks at behind the scenes stuff, looks at topics like D&D 5e for kids. We, on Wednesdays, play Dungeons & Dragons with Dominic Monaghan of Lost and Lord of the Rings and many, many other amazing movies and series. That's been a lot of fun. On Thursday, as mentioned, you can watch Rachel here be a cannibalistic old man with... I mean, Sweet Pea's not really cannibalistic because Sweet Pea's not eating other hyenas.
Yeah, she just eats other drow, so it's fine.
Yeah, she just eats drow.
She's not weird, it's just me.
Yeah, no, I mean, she's not a cannibal or anything. You showed her a hyena, she'd be like, good God, no. No, not one of my own kind. Your kind, sure. And on Fridays, we rotate between our two main streams, Goats and Dragons, which is currently on the Fates of Rin. It's our long-form level 1 to level 20 homebrew campaign, DM'd by Andy, the benevolent dictator. Or right now, Helpful Goat Presents, which is usually on Tier series, which is in my homebrew world of Tier. We will be wrapping up Tier Beyond the Doors this Friday, and then pretty soon after that, you may get to see even more of Rachel on the next Tier series, where she will not be a cannibalistic old man, though still awesome.
I'll be a half-burned cowman.
I was going to say, unless you're taking Nero in a very different direction.
Mm-hmm. I've had some thoughts.
Excellent. I look forward to that. Yeah, but tonight we are here to talk about D&D 5e for kids, and this is partially something that grew out of both Rachel's own experience and her very kind offer to share that with us, and also just some things that I've been seeing around the D&D community, and that even people that I know had been sort of reaching out to me and been like, hey, I see a lot of sort of D&D in the media. We now have a lot of time where we are stuck together, and I'd kind of like to share this with my kids, but how do? I'm not going to hand them the player's handbook, the monster manual, and like a campaign setting and expect that to go well. These are my
overwhelming.
Yeah, these are my cleverer friends who don't just actually hand them a player's handbook and be like, here, write up a character for me. But the first thing I kind of wanted to ask is just, how did you get into DMing D&D for kids?
Well, shockingly, I've always been a nerd. So I played D&D. Yeah, I know. I come off as really cool. I get it. But I played D&D, I think the first time when I was in high school, and then I played on and off since then. I think the first time I played as an adult actually was a one-shot that Andy did for me. So he got me back into it.
Nice.
But I am an elementary school teacher, and I was teaching at a school that had a lot of other nerds in it. It was like a high density of very nerdy kids and very strange kids, but in the best way.
Yeah.
And they knew that I was a huge nerd who loved video games and comics and all these things, and um, they asked if I could do a club, and they were like, "You should do some kind of club. We could play games. We could do something." So I started the Dungeons and Dragons Endorsener Club because that's my last name. And I've done the club I'm running now is now the third one that I've done. So
Nice.
I've learned and made it a little better each time. But yeah, the kids really just wanted to do something nerdy with me, so I thought I would give it a try.
Cool. Um, I think that a lot of people that I have talked to about this seem to have some anxiety of like the kids aren't going to like it at all, blah blah blah, and just sort of leaning towards that. Like, what's your favorite memory of DMing D&D for kids? Because I have to imagine there are some pretty amazing ones.
And it's like every kid is different, and like people know their kids better and things, and certain kids too don't get into it as quickly.
Mhm.
Like it takes a little while to figure it out. So in my second group, I had a girl, and she was just terrified. Like she was just I helped her she picked a bard. She never spoke. Like she was just like, "Sure, I'll be a bard. That sounds interesting," and then never did anything bardy whatsoever. Uh, but when it would come to her turn, she would just be like, "I attack it with this." Like it was very nervous. And by um by the end of our clubs were about when I was doing them through school, they were about 8 weeks long. And by the end of our club, we were in the process of fighting a ghost, and it had possessed one of the other party members. And then I think that he went unconscious, and the ghost popped out, and she wanted to do a swarm of daggers. She's like, "I'm going to do a swarm of daggers on it," and I was like, "Oh well, if you do a swarm of daggers on it, you're gonna hit this kid who's already unconscious, so you'll probably kill him." And so she gets up, and she like jumps around the room, and she takes him, and she like literally takes him, throws him on the floor, and she's like, "I cast cloud of daggers, and I jump on his body, and I shield it with my own." And I was like, "Okay, well, you're going to automatically fail your dexterity save then." And she goes, "It's fine, I'm going to do it." And so like she went from being this like super quiet, timid girl to literally acting out how she would save her friend from the cloud of daggers that was killing the ghost. So
That's super awesome. That's a level of active roleplay I don't think I've hit outside of Andy and Mai's predilection for like talking with our hands while we're DMing on push to talk. And then suddenly being like, why is no one reacting to what I just said? Someone just fuck. No, that's awesome.
yeah. Kids love to act, especially when they're doing like fighting stuff. They like to be like, "Okay, I did this," and they stand up and they show you everything. So
nice.
Yeah.
That seems super fun. All right, this is arguably the hardest question of sort of the things that I like brainstormed a little bit before and tried to put some structure in. But if someone was going to have dropped into our stream and then been a bad person and left after like 7 minutes, sort of the TLDV, DW, too long didn't watch. I went for didn't view first.
Yeah.
Like just if there was just going to be that sort of bullet list of like, hey, I'm interested in getting my kids into it or DMing for like my younger sibling and a couple of their friends or something. What the hell? What do I need to know? Top of the list.
Well, I try to think of just like simple bullet points for like for kind of almost like mindsets and how to get yourself a little bit ready for it. And the big thing was take the time to explain the basics. Don't rush to start it. Like I have never played D&D on my first session with a kid. Like ever. Sometimes we don't even get to it in the second session because like they're not going to research it on their own. They're not going to like they're not going to retain everything you tell them, depending on the age of the kid and the kid themselves. But like take the time to explain the basics, make sure you're working through it with everybody. Like don't rush to start it because they're going to have a worse time if they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You also really want to start simple. Like it can be fun to create a huge immersive world where you have this massive empire and all these different cities and this war is happening and this thing is happening, which is great for adults, but kids aren't going to fucking follow that. Oh, sorry. I realize this is a stream where I'm talking about kids, and then I'm going to curse terribly.
I didn't by the way, I did not apply the family friendly tag to this
You should
stream
never
for
when
a
I'm
reason.
involved. So.
I
I'm
was
good
like
at not cursing
tutorial,
when I'm working. I swear.
tutorial, educational, all of these things. Sure, I'm like family friendly. I was like, nah, it's Rachel and I. It's going to get foul at some point.
Right. So some people want to really like build an amazing world, which is great, but kids just aren't going to follow that. You know, you're going to tell them go to from point A to point B, and they're going to be like, yeah, we're going to go from point A to point B, you know, because that's what they think, you know. Also, even if you're new to it, you should be somewhat familiar with classes and races and some basic rules. You don't have to know exactly every single thing that a ranger can do, but you should know the ranger is the one that shoots arrows. You know, like you are going to be their guide for things, so you don't have to know everything, but you should know the basics. I wrote them as bullet points. So this is bullet point number 4: is be prepared to railroad. Like usually when you're thinking about teaching kids or playing D&D, like you want to be like, yeah, you can make any choice. Like be prepared to railroad your kids. Don't say you can get to this thing 3 different ways and plan 3 different things. Like you can work up to that, but be prepared to be like, here's your goal, here's how you get there, and let them do it.
You're going
like,
here. Here's
really
the
hold
boat.
their hand. Yeah.
It leaves at 3. Get yourselves to the dock by 3 with 5 gold for tickets.
Right.
Go.
And lastly, have like kids really like solving puzzles. They're kids. They don't need to make sense in this. Like you don't have to be like, I worked really hard to make so this puzzle really fits in with the story. Like I've written out a logic puzzle on note cards and given it to them and been like, here you go, this is on the chest, and they're like, I'm gonna solve it, you know. So like they just think of fun, creative, different things, and like have a fight every time because they also really love the fighting. Like those are my big important things that I have found work for me.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think one thing that I think would be really useful for people listening to this and watching this back and watching some insight into how to do this is that a lot of what I'm hearing is that kids quite possibly are going to be really interested and really into this, but there's no try to practice that DM skill of, you know, where normally you're like, oh, I don't want to railroad the players. It's more no, literally don't try to railroad the players into what you're interested in is the political fear and intrigue of this. It's like they want to hop in, like they like the rats in the basement mission. It's fun for them, so yeah, give them that. And then one of the rats rolls over and has a puzzle.
Right,
little,
exactly.
Like, note in its
Somehow.
hand.
They don't care. They're like, yeah, great. And like, especially now, it is not just nerdy kids who are into this. Like before I left my last school, I had 2 of like the cool 6th grade boys come up to me and be like, Mr. Urster, you're going to do a D&D group this time. Can we join? We really want to learn about it. Like, it doesn't have the same stigma that it used to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like any kid can get into this if you do it right.
Yeah. Awesome. I think that's really good. I think that's really good advice, and I think that that's certainly like a great thing in terms of the bullet list of, yeah, just meet them where they are, all of these specific things. And worth noting that, yeah, like they want to beat something up every. I was genuinely unsure. I think that was one of the questions I had there. I'm like, do they like the combat? Or
yes.
Nice.
Yes. I'll talk about it a bit more later too. Cool.
So sort of transitioning from just sort of this general level of you and your experience in setting stuff up and sort of the general topic, thinking about if you were going to be starting a game with someone, like how do you go about explaining D&D to younger kids? And it also might be useful also for both you and I guess to contextualize, what ages are we talking about here?
Oh, for me, I have played with 8 to 11-year-olds. So I teach 3rd and 4th grade, and then I run a group right now for some former students of mine that are 5th grade girls. I run a full 5th grade girl group for 11-year-olds. So.
Yeah, I suddenly realized like I'm using terms like younger kids and blah blah blah. I'm like, right. I'm not saying how do you like roll up a stat sheet for a 3-year-old.
Yeah, that would be a lot, but I mean, you could try. I would, especially for like younger kids, younger than 8, like you have to really hold their hand. You have to know that that kid is going to want to really do that stuff, because it's also a lot of sitting still.
Mhm.
And then for kids that are older, you might change things and make it a little harder as you go, kind of a thing. This is just the age range, like I do, upper elementary age. But you can always like start with this and then ramp it up, or ease it down. But for explaining it to kids, like every single kid has played a game before. Every single kid has played a board game. Most kids have played some form of video game, even if it's Roadblocks or no, Roblox is how you actually pronounce it, or like
I was like,
Minecraft or something. You're like, what? Yeah. Yeah, I don't play that one. That's the one children's game where they're like, Miss Dorsham, you play Roblox? I'm like, I don't. No, I can't. Anyway, tangent. Most kids have played games. Most of them have read books and other stuff and understand the concept of stories moving forward. Most of them like to like play act or make believe or things like that. Like they're experienced in some sense with doing that.
Mhm.
And so really what I just tell them is that they're going to be playing a game in which they are the characters themselves. They get to decide, like they really like the freedom of saying like, you get to decide this. You get to decide what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. You get to choose if you want to do this thing or not. And I'm just going to give you an adventure and lead you along, and you get to choose what you do in it. And most kids like immediately get excited for the freedom and the creativity. Um, and that's pretty much what gets them, at least in my experience, is just that they're really like they like games. Most kids like some kind of game,
Yeah,
or some kind of playing, or some kind of storytelling or something, and so they're just excited to kind of jump into that.
that's cool. Yeah, and I think that's kind of interesting because I have a lot of experience teaching high school age to adult people who are newcomers to D&D. I have DM'd a lot of games with first time players, and I think it's kind of interesting because what you're describing is really a contrast to one of the things I found with adults, which is that that's actually one of the hardest things, is getting them to understand no. You can do pretty much anything bounded by the laws of physics and, more importantly, magic. Like, you don't have to go fight this person. You can go talk to him. Or you could
Right.
bail on this altogether. And it can be kind of hard, I think, for people who have gotten more ingrained in sort of more structured games, and especially video games, for the like, no. Don't worry. I cannot predict what you're going to do. I can make something up really quickly. So it's kind of interesting that it seems like with kids, that's almost the draw.
Right.
Absolutely.
Really cool. Yeah, kids. I mean, and like I said, I'm generalizing a lot.
Oh yeah,
like not all kids are the same, but like as a whole, kids really like that ability to be creative, as long as you are also guiding them in it.
Again, don't do that. There are 15 different routes you may take to get to the capital. It's like, there's a boat. Yeah. Makes sense. And I guess that's sort of in this next question that I had, is that I've had a lot of adults that I've tried to teach this game be kind of intimidated. For Helpful Goat, I wrote a Goat's Guide to D&D that tried to strip it way down to, look, you're going to do this, this, and this. Here are these numbers. That's about it. Past there.
Well, what I tell the kids with like, here are these numbers, is also like, I reassure them, you don't need to know this stuff right now. Like, I'll talk about it a bit more when it comes to character creation, but I'm like, here's your sheet. I have one as well. Like, I always have a copy of their sheet.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it's your turn. Tell me what you'd like to do. And they can say like, oh, I'm thinking of doing this. And I'm like, great, let's look through here. If you look on this part of your page, you can see that you can do this. So let's roll this and see. Like, I don't expect them to be able to like start off by being like, okay, I've got this spell at first level. Let me cast it here. It's just like, what would you like to do? Would you like to hit them? Would you like to cast a spell? Would you like to do this? And then let's work through it together,
Yeah, and that makes, ironically, that is, I think, literally the advice that I have given to new players, and I think you've heard that, because when I DM'd you in Amberheart, like, I hadn't DM'd most of the people before, so I'm like, look, here's my rule as a DM. Ask me if you want to do something. I'll probably give you a way to do it.
Right.
It might hurt.
Because you want to encourage creativity and encourage interesting thinking. And
yeah, I had a player once who's like, I want to break through this door. I'm like, And they were druid. They turned into a giant hyena. And I'm like, yeah, sure, you can make a strength check as a giant hyena. I'm like, you realize you're trying to break through a stone wall and door. You're like, yeah, like it hurt a lot. You did it.
Right.
It hurt a lot. But so it's kind of interesting, and I think that that's one of the things that I'm hearing from you is a lot of this is that there are certain specific challenges that we're going to get into more, but that a lot of it is, yeah, treat it like you were DMing for newer adults.
Yeah.
They're going to have an
there's
interest.
a lot of similarities.
Like they're going to be interested in some part of the game more than others and blah, 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 and then just try to keep in the back of your mind that these are kids. So speaking of sort of more of the nitty-gritty side of things, are there any like rules or elements of the system that you find like it's really advisable to change?
Well, so yes, there are. Just like adults can be really bogged down with information, kids even more so, because like this is very, very new to them, and they're still like learning how to keep a lot of information in their head, and they don't really take notes and refer back to it, and they don't really like they're still sorting through that stuff in school and on their own as they're growing up. So I don't like to just, bog them down with a whole bunch of things. But I am in the camp, and I know some people are different, but I'm in the camp that the rules in D&D are flexible, and that like it doesn't need to be like, well, actually you have to do this because this said this. So if you don't like, I don't like that. One of the things I do is I guide a lot. So, it's fun to set up traps and things for them, but like I'll say like, oh, okay, great, you're at this door. Would you like to look for traps? Because they're not always going to remember to do that kind of a thing. So I step in a lot more as a DM than I would as an adult DM. If my adult players were just like, I open the door, I'd be like, well, sucks for you, But as a kid, it's
You
just
know
like,
what a trap is.
right. It's like, do you want to maybe make a perception check for me and look around, or do you want to maybe make an insight check when you're talking to this person? So I'm a lot more like hands-on when it comes to that, and um, and then also sometimes I'm not, because also sometimes having consequences is the best way to learn as well. So like forgetting to check for traps, to just let them do it, and then shoot a bunch of darts at them, and then they remember next time like, oh, we got to look for traps. Like, don't forget to do that. I was wondering. So this question was, I don't have the overlay up because I'm looking at a different thing. It was about changing the rules.
Yeah, the rule.
Or like,
what rules or elements of the system do you change in order to make things a little easier for the kids? And there, I don't really mean the difficulty of the game itself, but the difficulty of playing.
The things that I change are some of the requirements. So, like, I'm not gonna make my 11-year-old wizard girl have all of the components and sit in ritual casting for 10 minutes to cast her familiar. Like, she's never going to want to do that. For certain spells, like, I'm going to let them do it, like, even if they're standing, 60 feet away and they need to be 30 feet away or this. Like, most of it is just I'm much more lenient. I will say that when I first started with my first group, I didn't require them to know anything about spell slots. I reworded the spells so it was things like, you can cast this once per long rest or something like that, because like I wasn't sure at the time how to even teach them about something like spell slots, because I didn't fully understand how spell slots worked,
Yeah.
So I think my point in bringing that up is that you can change anything you want to also make it so it makes sense for you. Because like I didn't know how spell slots worked. I hadn't really played in a long time when I started doing this. So it was just like, yep, you can cast this spell whenever you feel like it. Sure, this one has endless casts,
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of rules that I generally fudge. Like I don't change like really big rules. And because for a lot of it too is I don't even know all the rules. I don't really need to. Like I feel like I said I'm not really a stickler for it. So I play things for basically I just make it for, does it seem like they're having a good time? if it doesn't, like maybe I need to shift something so that they're enjoying this. Maybe that one does hit, even though it wasn't before, because they're miserable that they're not being able to hit or something like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I find it really interesting because when I first sort of proposed this series and this idea is one of the things that had evoked that for me was I was seeing a lot of discussion in that particular moment online. This was like back in February, of good versus bad DMing and sort of good versus bad D&D and all of these discussions. And it seems so weird to me because I would see people on every side of the argument and like, no, exactly the rules, or you were a traitor to Dungeons and Dragons, or, you know, fudge everything, do everything, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that I never saw was I never saw the perspective, and I realized it's kind of my philosophy. Good D&D or good tabletop RPGs happen when at the end of a session, all of the players and the DM are like, that was fun and worthwhile. And I would totally do that again. And it's like anything that has to happen in order to make that happen is fine.
Right.
And the DM should get to have fun. I know, I personally know people who they basically treat tabletop RPGs like war games. Like they want to be like, no, you are 15 feet away. That means you... And that's fine. That's totally valid. I get that. That's what makes it fun for them, and it makes it fun for their players. So I have no problems with that. That is almost... I think you could probably tell if you've seen any of our streams in common with our group. I think I also... Like, I've said to you, I'm like, for the love of God, you don't need to count arrows. You're an archer.
Right.
I assume you are clever enough to purchase arrows in town. Maybe spend a gold every so often, and we'll call it good.
But yeah, it's just like a lot of those like intricacies of like, I don't make them care about food, or so, you know, they always have food, they always have whatever. Just because like children don't want to care about that kind of stuff, you know, or like, so for like dark vision, you know, sure, if we're in the dark and somebody doesn't have dark vision, they can't see. I'll do that. But like, they can light a torch. I'm not going to be like, you can only see within 30 feet. And then when you fight, you can't see because you have to do like... Kids don't like that kind of stuff generally. If you know your kid and they like those, like, you know, that like minutia, those details and stuff, then like fine, do that. But most kids are just like, listen, I just want to punch this orc in the face, you know? Like that's what they get out of it.
We've all just wanted to punch that orc in the face. That makes a ton of sense. I was going to have a goof about what you don't run full variant encumbrance rules for your 11-year-olds. And then it immediately like fell back on me because I'm like, shit, I don't actually remember what the encumbrance rules in D&D are, because it's something obscure like multiply your strength by 13 or something. And I'm like, nope, I'm out. You're making me do weird multiplication. I'm out.
Yep, nope, I don't follow any of that.
By the time you've strapped the third cart to your back, you and I need to have a conversation. Probably not realistic, but outside of that. So yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that speaks to a lot of just DMing philosophy. And maybe one thing that it is, if you are one of those people who's a little bit more of a war gamer DM, or a little bit more of like a survival adventure DM, which I have full sympathy for. I kind of want to run a survival campaign at some point, but it's like, maybe don't do that with the kid, because they're not going to see the joy in have you eaten your ration for the day?
Yeah.
How do you keep kids engaged during role playing? Although it sounds like this may not actually be that much of an issue.
Well, let me see. I wrote notes so that I wouldn't, you know, like forget what I was going to say. Hold on.
I think Lena and I repeatedly forgot stories that we were telling about our own lives. So again, you're good.
Yeah. Okay. Because also I think we skipped a question in the order of the things, and so I was like, wait, what? Where am I? It's fine.
That was unintentional.
I didn't think you did it just to trip me up. I mean, that would be a little bit mean. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It might just be that my stuff is different.
I also might have made some mistakes when I was copying and pasting. So if I did, we can always loop back to it. We, in fact, could address that question right now if you want to.
I could answer this one first, and then we can go back to it. So about keeping kids engaged in role playing. For the most part, they are not going to do it from the start. They're just not. Like, they love the idea of it, but like, and I play with theater kids too. Like, I play with kids that are big theater kids, and so like there might be one kid that's like, yeah, and I gotta do this, and let's talk here, and other ones are just like, uh. um, but it takes a while for them to warm up, really, and that's okay. So like, what I do is I try to include um combat stuff and a lot of guiding stuff first, and then gradually sprinkle in opportunities for them to role play. uh I really try at the beginning to go over the ideas of improv, specifically yes and. They always assume that I mean that you can't say no. Like, whenever I tell the kids, like, you should say yes and work towards these things, they're always like, remember Miss Dorshner says you can't say no? And I'm like, no, nope. There was a time when my class said, Miss Dorshner said no is a bad word. I'm like, no, I don't want to teach that. Say no when you need to, please. That was not the takeaway here.
Raise hand. No, kids, we're doing a full stop. We're doing a special lecture today.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, let's talk about when you should say no, for sure. Like, always feel comfortable. But it was just talking about, because a lot of kids, they're like Michael Scott in The Office in improving and role play and stuff, where it's just like, totally, it's just like, well, I have a gun. Well, I have a gun. Like, they're not going to play off each other. They're just like, I'm going to be the star of this show. And so, like, I have one girl who plays right now, and she gets scared really easily. So she plays like a big old tiefling sorcerer, and she's always like, I run away. And I'm like, okay, let's pause for a second. Like, do you think that your character would actually abandon all of her traveling friends? Do you think that, she would actually be scared of this, or is it just you that's scared? And what's another way that you can deal with being frightened that's not just running away? And if you still feel like you would run away, then sure, let's do that. But like, with adults, often it's like, if they say, I'm going to do this thing, you're like, all right, you do it. With kids, they say it, and it's like, well, let's discuss that. Because like, with all of these things, it's going to be a teaching moment. Like, they're still children. Like, every single opportunity is a teaching moment to be like, actually, let's think about this kind of a thing. And so I'm always going to be their first like foray into role playing, because like, I can say like, I can have a conversation with them, and they can have like a one-on-one back with me, because I'm not going to be like, well, I don't know what to say now. You know what I mean? Like, I can always be a comfortable partner where I can kind of like egg them on and stuff like that. But what I do when I try to get them more comfortable in talking with each other is I literally just say, okay, you're camping out for the night. Do you talk about anything? Like, just prompt them to be like, do you have a conversation? You're walking along the road. What do you guys talk about? And sometimes it's inane stuff. Sometimes it's just like, hey, did you see that neat tree over there? But sometimes they're like, what are we going to do about this thing? And I don't know. And I'm scared. Like, just kind of little prompts for like, hey, are you talking right now? Because sometimes they forget to actually talk.
Yeah.
So that's a big way to just kind of get them more comfortable. But it's always going to be an ease into it, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes a ton of sense. So what is the question that I have skipped, and people in the chat are accusing me of being the unbenevolent dictator and having done this intentionally, which I have chosen to neither confirm nor deny. So
you might not have skipped it, and I might have just been dumb. But I have the one that messed me up is because you went to what rules and elements of the system. But I had approaching D&D, even the relatively lightweight 5e, can be intimidating for adults. How do you make it easier for kids?
Yeah, I think we'd actually sort of talked about that one some.
I had like a whole bunch of stuff though. So I was like looking at my notes, and I was like, those aren't the notes for answering this question, but my brain is getting confused because that's the order they're in.
I'm sorry.
So
let's go back to this question then.
Okay.
I think you just did also a really good job of like answering a bunch of this from the question before of how do you explain stuff, and then it segued right into the rules and elements. But absolutely, let us talk about this.
Well, because here was where I wanted to like show some of my resources as well.
Absolutely,
if you wanted to do that. We can start first with the class explanation that I made.
Yes, which would be much better if my eyes would process where that is. Bingo. And let me put the window capture. There we go. So they are now
So
looking at the class explanation.
cool. So I put a lot of time and effort into making this for this current sorry, I'm pulling it up on my own thing so I can look at it too, because that will make it easier if I can actually look at it and see. And why aren't you here, you
I'll also
son of
just say,
butt?
while
Oh, there we go.
Rachel is finding this particular document, in the chat, I just dropped in a link to Helpful Goat Gaming has all of these resources from Rachel, who's very kindly agreed to share them. You can follow that link. All of the resources are there as view so that you can download them, use them, etc. I'll periodically keep posting that link in the chat.
Yeah, so I made all of these things. Some of them like a couple things I took from the internet and stuff, but like the class explanation and later the race explanation and stuff is something that I made. So if you see up on the screen, I have D&D classes, and I took every class and just got pictures, just simple pictures, because kids really like to be able to see, what they're talking about. And then I just did a super basic explanation of it. So, like barbarian, I want to be a warrior. I fight with swords, axes, or hammers, and I don't wear armor. That's for the weak, and I'm strong, but not very bright. Like, that's all they need to know about barbarians. That's all kids care about. They don't care about rage. They don't care about, if they have the different totem of the whatever and stuff. They'll care about that later as they go and they get to make those choices. But like, they want to know, am I shooting an arrow? Am I punching people? Am I casting spells? And so, right, exactly. But so I made all of these, and I basically I print them out for every kid, and we go over it together individually, and I have them star, their top 3 that they're interested in, and then we can work together to build a balanced party, because otherwise, like, every kid would be a sorcerer. I have literally had a sorcerer in every single kid campaign that I've
Lena
done.
would approve.
Kids are like, yeah, kids love sorcerers. But like they want to know which class punches the hardest. They want to know which one lets you throw fireballs. They also, if you want to put up, unless it's too much effort to keep having you put up different things.
No, not at all.
If you want to put up the race explanation too, I made that, and it's a little bit different, where it's a lot less information. It's just bullet points, because class really is what's most important, right? In D&D is like, that's like really what guides what you do.
Yeah. What
and
you
then
do, how you do it.
Right. And for the race one, like, they don't really care that much. They want to know, does it match up well? Some of them want to know if it matches up well with the class they chose. Some of them don't care. Some of them want pointy ears. Some of them want to be a dragon. I have so many kids. My first campaign, I'm pretty sure, had 4 dragonborns in it. And it was just like, yeah, sure. So yeah, like, they just want to know the super basic things. So I basically, went through the book and just created these and showed them to the kids, and it's just so much easier than trying to actually explain, like, how each class works and how these things, because here's the thing, like, also, like, to explain the difference between a wizard, a warlock, and a sorcerer, it's a lot. So this can also be good for adults. So you could basically see, like, why is a warlock different from a sorcerer, or why is a wizard different? Like, I don't fully understand. Because this just, like, breaks it down to the super base things that they're actually interested in.
Yeah.
And yes, Elise, horn is a good thing. Kids choose that. They're like, oh yeah, I want horns. Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, let's be fair. Charity has been very obsessed with the fact that he is currently missing.
Right.
Like,
and then
I also like that dwarf is defined by beards, which feels very traditional.
Absolutely.
It feels very traditional, but I like that, you do have different people have pointy ears, which I am not going to lie, I would never have thought, I kind of cast myself as hopelessly out of touch with kids, and I'm actually not that bad, but like, I never would have thought, there is a massive defining characteristic I care about. The scales, the beard, the horns, I get all that. I'm like, pointy ears? Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah. I have had a lot of elves in all my campaigns as well, because kids are like, yeah, cool, pointy ears, let's do it. Elves are neat. If you wanted to pull up, I'm going to remember what I named things. Somewhere. Oh, the D&D stat explanation. It's a picture.
Yes, the tomato.
So I found this on the internet, and it's like, So the question was about like how do you make things, easier when everything is really intense. So I just try to be try to explain things pretty simply. So I really like this one. Strength is being able to crush a tomato, dexterity is being able to dodge a tomato, constitution is being able to eat a bad tomato, intelligence is knowing a tomato is a fruit, wisdom is knowing not to put a tomato in a fruit-based salad, and charisma is being able to sell a tomato-based fruit salad. Like, I always really like that because like that is something that kids can connect with and make sense. It's funny and
Yeah.
it's quick, and like trying to actually explain to them what like dexterity is or constitution, those aren't things that they really think of. And then were
Huh.
you gonna say something?
No, I was seeing the handwritten little quote that it had in there of that is the completion of, I believe, the Reddit meme of, wouldn't a
Mhm.
tomato-based fruit salad just be salsa? Found the
Yep.
bard. I incidentally use
Exactly.
some version of the tomato, like, attributes are your relationships to a tomato or the actions you have on a tomato, in the Goat's Guide, because it's like,
Oh,
yeah, it's
nice.
great, it's super
Yeah, I saw
lightweight.
I saw the Reddit meme a while ago, and I was like, "This is a perfect way
Yeah.
to explain this." And then if you want to click on skills list breakdown.
Breakdown. What is the alphabet? Nice.
So I really like this because it just basically tells you like what you're good at and what you know. So like acrobatics, I'm good at tumbling, flipping, and rolling. Like that's all you need to really know about acrobatics. And so I talk a little bit later on about creating characters and things like that and how we pick those skills. But for
Mhm.
the kids, it's just kind of nice to know what they mean because like a kid's not going to necessarily know what's like sleight of hand means or
Insight.
insight or you know that like nature like they know what nature means but in the sense of like how does it affect D&D and
Yeah.
things like this. So I always put this on like the back of their because I print out all this stuff for them because I like to actually have them
Mhm.
have these things so they can actually see, and we go over each one, and it also kind of gets them a little bit invested into the thing because even if they're not going to have acrobatics or animal handling, they get really excited at like this brings up a lot of creativity at the prospects of things they could do with their character. Um, and I think that that's good for showing what I'm showing for now. But um,
Now we're back.
uh, you're gonna also need to expect um, that your players are not going to remember this. Like they're going to want to track something in a forest. So, but it's going to be like the person, like they're going to be like, I don't know, we should track this. I'm not going to be like, all right, make a survival check if they have -2 to survival or whatever. I'm going to like, just like I talked about a little bit before, remind them like, okay, who has the highest survival skill? Let's look and see because um, if it's not something a character would normally do, I don't want them to be like penalized for
Yeah.
thinking of something but not having it be what their character would do. Um, and then last but not least for this part, I swear this one was a really long answer. So
I'm really sorry that we skipped the majority of this one. I was apparently just like, yeah, you had already delivered what seemed like a really complete answer. So I'm like, and we're moving.
yeah. Yeah, no, I wrote 5 pages of notes for this, so it's all fine. I mentioned
I hope you
before.
enjoyed
Oh,
doing that, because otherwise I feel
oh
really
yes.
bad.
I'm a teacher. It's fine. I'm used to over preparing for stuff. I mentioned before that like my first session never involves D&D. We go over the races, we go over the classes, we go over all the things, and then I make sure that we build a balanced party. I never let it be that everyone's a magic user. I always make sure at least one person has some form of healing spell, usually a bard because nobody ever wants to be a cleric. I've never had a kid want to be a cleric. Um,
Little preachy.
but like, right, like my current one is sorcerer, wizard, bard, monk. So like our monk is our tank. They are a squishy party. But I keep that in mind for when I'm doing things with them. But I always let them roll, like I let them roll their 66, right? And then do the whole and I record the rolls. But and this is where I said it's good for you to familiarize yourself with how things work. Kids are going to get very confused if you have them create their own character sheets. It's a lot. Like I'm very practiced at it. I've probably made 40 character sheets in the last year, it still takes me at least an hour per character sheet, because I'm also putting in the time to put things into kid-friendly language and things like that. But so you talked about, the question specifically talks about, like, with everything being as intense as it is in 5e and trying to make it more understandable. I don't ask them stat questions. I ask them real questions about how are they, like, envisioning their character. So do you want to fight with swords, or do you want to fight with an axe? Do you want to do this, or do you want to do that? So then I can craft their character sheets on my own. It is definitely the most amount of work that I ever do, but you only have to do it once. Like, it's a one-time thing. It's very front-loaded. And I mentioned before, and we can show an example later. I think that I'll get to a point later where I can show an example of character sheets where I've written out their abilities and things, and not use the very convoluted way that the player's handbook writes it. So yes, I think I have covered that question that we skipped.
Awesome. Given that was actually a pretty long one, I think this is a good chance to take a quick break, take like 5 minutes. Everyone can stand up, stretch legs, grab a drink, adult beverage or otherwise. We're not here to judge you. And yeah, we will be back in just a couple of minutes. I know it's still the midpoint, but thank you so much for doing this, Rachel. This is super fascinating. I'm really enjoying getting to hear about this and getting sort of another perspective.
Thanks for letting me ramble about teaching children.
We love it. So yeah, we will be back in just a few minutes, everybody. Hang tight. Hey everybody, we are back from either mandatory stretching time or mandatory beverage time or
Or both.
mandatory Chris leaving time. I'd like that last one the least. I'm fine with either mandatory stretching or mandatory beverages. Just as a reminder, we are here talking about D&D 5e for kids, DMing, setting up games, but that a lot of these lessons, and you'll see this if you've been in the chat at all, are really, really, really applicable to new players generally and everyone generally. We are talking with Rachel, our friend of Grossest Rachel fame. I'm not sure if that's fame. Your Twitter is at Grossest Rachel.
Infamy.
Infamy. Yeah. Who has played a variety of campaigns with us, is currently playing Inspire, will be playing in an upcoming tier campaign, and is an all-around awesome person who has a lot of experience with DMing and teaching D&D to kids, and kindly agreed to come on and talk to us about it. So we had just skipped back to this question that I had callously cut over, and apparently involved like your explanations of about half your handouts. So I really almost destroyed the runtime of this entire segment by doing this. And then, so I think that the last thing that we had answered before we skipped back was how we kept kids engaged during role playing. So then the next question, how long of a session do you recommend for kids? Because I have seen such wildly different expectations for adults, where I saw someone online where they're like, yeah, but it's not a real one shot unless it's 10 hours, right? They stone cold meant that. I'm like, I love D&D. I will hit the table and just be like, no, I cast Fireball on myself. Am I down yet?
I mean, I've done a 12-hour one shot before, not with children, but it's like a.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just picturing a child trying to do 12 hours of D&D at one table.
No. I've done overnight trips with kids with school, and 12 hours of anything straight is too much for a kid. For a time, so when I first started doing this, I was doing it through the school that I worked at as an after-school program. Like, my school really encouraged teachers to stay after and do after-school clubs, which they could charge money for themselves. It wasn't like, there's like a teacher would do it and they could say it's free, or they could say, it's $20 for the quarter or whatever. Like, it wasn't a requirement of teachers to stay after. It was just like hey, it's a way for you to make some extra money and connect
we'd really
with the
enjoy
kids.
this. Yeah.
Right. So like we had a Magic the Gathering club at school. There was crafting club. There was Minecraft club. Like I told you, it was a nerdy school. But I started as this, and technically you have like an hour, from 4 to 5, but the kids have snack and they do other things in this. So like usually it was about 45 minutes. Too short. I did it because I had to, because those were the time constraints, but 45 minutes is just too short because kids do not move through this quickly. Like there's a lot of, discussing and talking and arguing and what am I doing? And yeah. So right now I do, I don't work for that school anymore, but I still do D&D with some of the kids that I knew. And we aim for at least meeting for 2 hours. So some of that time is just talking and catching up. I always have the kids, similar to other people, I always have the kids tell me what happened last time, because it kind of helps them. And we meet on Roll20 now, since we're all stuck inside our homes. But I feel like 2 hours is a good upper limit. Like an hour and a half, I think, is the sweet spot that I have found, where it's just enough time for some adventure, maybe a puzzle solving, some combat, a little bit of role playing, rest, and then done. I recommend to try and not make it so that you have to cut in the middle of combat, because when I was doing it at school, I had to do that all the time, and it was a really big pain in the butt, where I just had to take a picture of the the figures and try and set them up again like last time. And but yeah, I think an hour and a half is pretty good amount of time for a kid to be able to sit still and do a thing with you and get your stuff out and then move on from it.
And also get to like enjoy it and actually engage with it. Because that's one of those things, because I kind of figured, there was going to be a bound, and most people would probably think of the bound at the upper end of, okay, they're going to get squirmy at some point or just not be able to hold that attention, and that makes a lot of sense. But I'm like, there's got to be a lower limit as well, right? Of you're just not putting out enough for them to grab onto.
Things. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I like being together for 2 hours and having about an hour and a half of playtime in that time.
Nice.
Yeah.
You actually kind of just answered this in certain ways. What kind of content balance do you find works best for kids? I'm now nervous whenever I see you looking at your notes, and I'm like, did I skip another question?
No, you did well. Yeah, so I mean, I've hit on this some, but at the beginning, it's definitely combat heavy because it helps the kids to learn their characters, to be able to read their sheets better, that kind of thing. Like the very first campaign I did with kids was just an arena battle royale. There was almost no actual role playing. It was just like, cool, you're in this thing, you're gonna fight these monsters, go, you know, and that was fine. But like, it's good to introduce combat first because that's something that at least like they have a guideline for, they can follow, they can do. And like I said, role play comes later and you figure it out as you are doing it, and they branch off more and do it. But like, keep in mind that you might also just have certain kids that are always going to be too shy and nervous to role play. I have right now, my group is 4 girls, 3 of whom are theater kids, 1 of whom is not. And the one who is not is just, she's enjoying herself. She, participates in battle and this or that, but she does not participate in role play. And like, I give her opportunities, but if she doesn't take them, I'm not going to force them on her because like, that's not everybody's bag, and it's fine. It's funny because she's the bard. It's always the bard.
Okay.
And then we have the girl that plays the sorcerer is very verbose and talks a lot and very exaggerated in all her movements. So she's always, I'll say, who would like to tell us what happened last time? And she's always like, me. And the last time she did that, the girl who's very quiet and played the bard private messaged me, I think that Grace is a bard in real life. And just like, it made me smile because I really liked that she said that. But yeah, like really, there has to be a balance, but it's usually leans more heavy towards combat and puzzles and things like that. And then it will, when the kids kind of show you that they're ready, they will. Like, you'll give them a little thing, like a thing, and they'll talk with you, and that'll be it. And you'll give them a thing, and they'll talk a little bit more, and then suddenly they're talking the entire time, and you have 0 combat at all in that round, which would happen for the first time ever the last time we played. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's, and I think that, again, I just try to I'm trying to, as we're going through this, pull out some of these higher level themes. A lot of what I'm hearing is understand that they're kids. Start with the thing that in D&D is the most structured. Combat has a literal structure.
Right. Exactly.
Like, oh, it's your turn. You can do X, Y, and Z things on your turn. It's now no longer your turn, so that structure can help them a little bit. And then with especially like the role playing or the other elements, present them with opportunities and keep presenting them with opportunities, but let them engage the way they want and make sure that no one feels pressured to, well, you're not doing it right if you're not talking right now, or that makes a lot of sense. I also find this kind of...
Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
I saw Sam's comment about maybe they're picking character types that they would find desirous in themselves. And I think that's a good, point of where they're like, oh, this character seems really cool. I wish I was more like that. And like, you, as the DM for kids, you just have to be understanding that maybe that's what they want, but maybe they're not ready to actually do it. So like, don't be like, you're the bard, you should be talking more and interfacing more and doing this, because like, maybe that's what they really wanted to do, but they're not actually comfortable with it. And you should just be okay with that.
Yeah. So maybe encourage them, give them opportunities to, and I would imagine also really strongly reinforce it when they do. Like, yeah, that was, that was really well done, because it would seem to me, especially I can think of my own experience of starting to play D&D. I was really nervous actively role playing. Like, I didn't know exactly what I was doing.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah, I was kind of scared of screwing something up, or like, no, your character would never say that. And, like, it was really nice when people were like, oh, that's cool, or I like that. And, that sort of feedback mechanism can be really valuable. And I think that's probably seems to me generally true with kids. Like, they're trying to learn and grow. Encourage them to. I think we've touched on a bunch of special challenges for DMing kids that people should be aware of. But any that you particularly want to call out?
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge I've found is the struggle for who gets to dominate the group and make decisions. Like, you know, they're kids, but and they're still figuring things out. You know, kids are still learning how to do that stuff in regular life. But you are sometimes there is a kid that is sure that what they're suggesting is right and they refuse to even listen and they're just like, I'm going to do this, you know? And the challenging for DMing kids with that are just challenges for interacting with kids in general, you know? So there's distraction, obstinance, rudeness, that kind of stuff. Um, I just always try to guide their communication when they talk about things. Um, Try not to get mad and upset. I mean, so like I said, first and foremost, I'm a teacher
Mhm.
and I have pretty intense views on certain things. And one of them is you do not get mad and you do not yell. Like I can be an intense person. People who know me know this. I do not yell in the classroom. I do not yell at kids. I do not get mad at them. There have been times where I've gotten like stern when a kid accidentally got kicked in the face and bled all over my classroom. But it wasn't like, what are you doing? You know, it was like, oh God, go get that, you know. But yeah, it was a math game gone wrong. What can you do?
It was more, we're doing emergency medical aid, children.
Yeah.
Fun new learning module.
But kids, I mean, adults don't react well to being yelled at, but kids especially do not. So like when a kid is being, for lack of a better term, a dick and being very obstinate about things and like, no, it's going to be this, we're going to do it my way. Like you need to do your best to not get mad at that kid. Don't yell at them, don't snap at them, and try and say like, okay, I see what you're saying. Can you explain your reasoning for it? And then maybe so and so can explain. And I mean, it can be tedious, but like that's how it is with kids. If you want things to actually work, you need to be able to be willing to put in that work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's some of the labor you're agreeing to take on, whether you're teaching, parenting,
Mhm.
DMing for kids.
And I have definitely lost my cool before with the kid in my D&D club, and he has stormed out because he kept just doing a thing. Like nobody is perfect, okay? It's
Yeah.
just that like, you know, one of the things is like kids are gonna be like, I want to do what I want to do. You're gonna have some kids that do it more than others, and you just need to be able to navigate that. And a lot of that is just trying to tap. I mean, a lot of things with working with kids in general that I think a lot of people miss. And I don't want to be like, I know so much about children, but like I do. But is trying to tap into their empathy, you know, like kids are still learning how to interact with people. They're still learning how to talk to people without like they don't always realize when they're being offensive or they're being rude or they're being whatever. So some of it is just trying to tap into their empathy and being like, could you like what if I said this to you while you were playing? How would you feel if I did that? Okay, so how do you think this person feels when you're saying this kind of a thing? A lot of it is just like you're gonna have kids that are going to fight against you and you need to be able to work with them in a way that's not angry and will still move things forward,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
This is literally just a follow on to this question, but that I thought of one of the things, like I said, I read and I contribute to a lot of D&D forums and I think about a lot of these questions. A pretty common sort of horror story on there is the player that insists X works Y way. Of like, no, I am, blah, blah, blah. Do you find that more of an issue with kids or less of an issue?
Do you mean like a skill or something? Like they'll argue about like a skill works a certain way or
Yeah, or that I absolutely can do this, or generally.
oh god, no.
Okay, I didn't
I
really.
am the I am the be all end all of D&D knowledge. They see me as like the deity of like I know everything, what I say is law. And I'm not like I don't, you know, say that, but like they see me as like you know everything. So if
Yeah.
you say I can't do this and you tell me why, then I believe you.
Okay, and that was
At least with kids. And I've had some like kids whom I love. I mean, some of my favorite kids are the most difficult ones, you know, but I've had some ornery kids who it's still like, trust me, I am telling you this for this reason and I am correct. And they like I've never had a kid truly fight me on it because they just don't have a grasp of the stuff well enough to be able to do it. So
and I could certainly see that. It was kind of interesting as you were discussing this kind of the role taking, the empathy, and the thinking about it, that I would say that in the wider sort of D&D online, people asking advice of each other, that's probably the two biggest complaints that I see, or the two most common threads that I see, is players who have DMs who, wrongly or rightly, are consistently ruling something away.
You know what we
And
can do?
what?
Let me bring it up myself. I have a thing. It's a dumb thing that I made.
Probably going to
Let me
disagree
remember
that
what I
it's
called
dumb.
it.
Is it the D&D contract?
Yes.
And should I bring it up?
Let me look at my own. Oh my God, why are you so weird? Not you or me, the computer. It's fine.
Yeah, you ain't wrong.
So I would say that, Google Docs encountered an error. Cool, thanks, Google Docs.
Google Docs does not like displaying this. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and show people what's currently on my screen. It is half of the document. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the D&D logo and then half of the text. And no, you don't need to read the right side of this paragraph. It is unimportant.
So you know what I did is I made it with Word first, and I think that's the problem, is that it just didn't port over well.
Is it in landscape?
Sadly. I don't know what it is. It shouldn't be.
Because it looks like it might be wider than it is tall.
But it shouldn't be, because I printed it out. It's a portrait thing.
Okay.
But basically, I do this silly contract thing.
I will give you all the first half of it.
Right, where I make it them say, like, I hereby vow to be a good member. I make it sound, fancy and crap. But I try to have it be like where, I promise to remember that mine is not the only good. I thought I might have a different version in my own. Let me just see, and if I don't, then don't worry about it. Yeah. No, it opened it right first and then it messed it up. You monster. Feel betrayed. Okay, now it opens on mine. So apparently the copied version I sent you didn't like it. Okay, I'm gonna read it and you can listen to me. It says, I hereby vow to be a good member of Miss Dorschner's D&D club. This means I will be respectful of all players, even if I disagree with them. I promise to remember that my opinion is not the only good one. Most of all, I remember that the whole point of Dungeons and Dragons is to have fun. So I will do my best to make that happen for me and everyone else here. So, like, I try to really just send that home, where, like, they're understanding, like, this is supposed to be fun. You're not the only person who has good ideas. But I think that a good thing to also bring up, and a good thing to also bring up, and that you could also bring up with adults before you start playing, is to say, like, you can do your best to try and defend a use of a spell, but I am the final authority here.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do in another campaign that I play in is our DM will say, I'm going to say you can do it this way. After the game is over, let's sit down and have a discussion where we could talk about why it is, because we don't want it to be like sitting there and arguing for half an hour while everybody else is waiting, know? So it can be like, hey, if you really want to discuss this, I'm open to it, but let's move on with the game and then go do that here. And that works for both kids and adults.
Yeah.
I found.
I think that's
Sorry,
also...
my document didn't work.
No, it's okay. I was opening it and I'm like, damn, I don't know if this is my setup, or then I was like, no, wait, I'm not viewing this through the stream. This is what my Google Drive is doing.
Yeah. I don't know why it hates
Sam
us.
requested seeing more of my t-shirt, which is a Pip-Flip t-shirt.
Of course he would. That's very cute. I didn't wear a cute t-shirt, I'm sorry. I have an octopus on my necklace.
Outstanding.
That's cute.
You're summoning Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
No, and that makes a lot of sense, and I think that that's a really good thing to get them into this element of collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
Shared or collaborative. A term that Andy really likes. I think it's a really good one. All right. Just sort of generally, overall, what do you personally find the most rewarding about playing D&D with kids?
So, I would say the most rewarding thing is them, like, figuring things out and starting to come up with things on their own. Like, generally they're really funny and clever, and they think to use spells in ways that I've never thought of, or they're just like, I'm going to do this thing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you are. That's awesome. Like they're really creative. It's really fun to see them come out of their shell. And I really enjoy being able to immerse them in a story that I create, or like surprising them with twists and puzzles. Like I'll give them a puzzle and they'll be like, oh, I think it's this. It wasn't that. And they're just like, it's really fun. It really is just fun to see them have fun, like to see them try and actively work it out. Or like I've started introducing a recurring character that they meet after every time they do a big accomplishment. And it's really cute to see their eyes light up. Like, and the whole thing is they get these fancy muffins from this character that gives them basically gives them an inspiration die, but they can keep this muffin with them, and they smell like rose petals. So every time I'll be like, oh, you wake up and it smells like rose petals, and they go, muffins. Like they're just like so excited about it. And so it's just really neat to see them like get really excited, and but also like watching them learn how to work together and seeing, learning who solves puzzles best, or who, fights this best, and being like, oh, well, she should be the one to do this because she's our really strong one, and I should do this. And like, it just really like, I really like watching them have fun and watching them kind of build that camaraderie and build those problem solving skills. And
Yeah.
it's just, that's the part I enjoy the most, for sure.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I can also relate to that both in terms of like, yeah, that seems like that would absolutely be super rewarding as someone working with kids. And I would also say one of the takeaways that I have at a high level from this is if you're going to be DMing for kids, especially kids in this age, you're going to be a bit of a teacher, no matter what. Like, you might have been their teacher and then you DM'd for them, but it's like, no, yes. If you're doing this, this is not like the standard DM, here is the world I'm building out for my players. You're constantly going to be teaching them about D&D and sort of going through that. So that definitely seems like that would be super rewarding as someone who did like collegiate teaching. Loved seeing that growth. But it also seems like that group cohesion, that teamwork, that really cool moment of, oh, the monk punched him and distracted him, and then the rogue slipped in and attacked him, and the sorcerer locked this person out, and the healer made sure that we were all okay. It's like, that feels cool no matter what you are. Like, yeah, when exactly. You hit that really cinematic moment of everything's clicking, that's awesome. And it's a lot of fun, I think, that you... Yeah. In case we have any parents who are wondering about whether or not they should allow their children D&D, or if they're a little more bottom line oriented on this entire thing, what advantages and benefits of D&D do you see for kids, or like things that parents might want to know?
Right. I think that what I really like about D&D for kids is it teaches a different way of thinking. Like we talked about a little bit, you can't just do what you want to do immediately. You have to think like your character. You can't always be reactionary. You have to learn how to have some strategy and wait your turn. You learn how to work together in a group. You learn how to share. You can't always just be the one that takes the best items and does all the things first. Otherwise, your friends aren't going to want you in their group anymore, It teaches them problem solving. And I said, though I hate this phrase, it also teaches thinking outside the box, like they have to think about different ways of doing things. And with anything that you're teaching, you want to try and not just be like, I'm teaching you this, you are learning this. Like, that's the worst kind of teaching. The best kind is to give them some kind of problem that like prompts them to be like, okay, let me look at it from all these different angles and see how I can solve it. And D&D does exactly that, like it is such a teaching tool. They have to come up with creative solutions for things. It's not always just, okay, I punched the goblin in the face and now I get to go do this thing. Like sometimes they have to come up with creative ways of doing it. Critical thinking. Also, math. So I've played with kids in person, and now I play online on Roll20. I still make them do the math themselves every time. I did not input their player sheets into Roll20. I emailed them to their parents. When I level them up, I email them again, and they print them out, and they keep them in front of them. They just click the, roll the D20, and then they tell me the thing, because like that's a big part of it. I make them do the math for me. It's like, okay, so you're adding in this and you're adding in this. Okay, so it's +4 +2 plus you rolled a 17. Tell me what that is. Like I teach arithmetic, so it's like I'm gonna keep saying like, yeah, no, keep doing that. Like, I make them do it every time. And also, one last like final really good thing is it does help them to try and stay organized and keep track of things. Like I expect them to keep track of their spell slots. I expect them to keep track of how many sorcery points they used. I expect them to keep track of items that they get and their papers and things like that. And I help them. Like I'm not just like, yeah, do it. But like it does help with like building those organization skills as
Yeah.
well.
Well, I think that's also really nice because one of the things that's probably hardest about building organizational skills, not just for kids, but just people learning it, is that it, it can be such a delayed reward for doing that. Like it's, oh, I don't really need to do this. I can scrape by on this. And then as more and more gets added, even then it can be hard to see it. Whereas in something like this, where there's a game, it's like, no, look, you very immediately have a system and a way to organize it. And you don't have to come up with all of it, but you gotta do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that seems awesome.
Yeah, it has a lot of scaffolding is the term that we use in things where it's like a lot of the stuff is already built out for them and you fill it in for them and then you're helping them figure out how to do it. You're not just like organize all this stuff yourself.
Yeah. It isn't here's 15 things, sort them,
Right.
and then keep
D&D
track
stuff
of them.
has a lot of scaffolding in it already that you can like help guide them to understand it.
Yeah. A lot of sense. Any advice, and this is, I think, like the only question that I have that addresses sort of where the audience is the kids. Any advice for kids wanting to start out with D&D?
Yeah. It's just a game. It's there to have fun. Like you're there to have fun with your friends and enjoy the fantasy. Oh, I wrote enjoy the fantasy world of shooting poison arrows at direwolves and saving kingdoms. Like that's it. You don't need to worry if you don't understand all the rules or if you fail sometimes. You're gonna fail. Like you are. Everybody fails in D&D. They fail rolls. They make bad decisions. Whatever it is. And it's also okay if you're not the star of the show every time. Everyone has to start somewhere, and it's okay to start without knowing things. But it's just a game, and it's just there to have fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then we already sort of touched on sort of advantages and benefits, but any advice for parents whose kids are saying they want to play D&D?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be that guide for them, you should research D&D yourself, and you can look at with the Galway's guide that he mentioned that he had. If he shares it, I don't know if he does.
I can drop it in here. It probably I might drop it somewhere adjacent to it because I'm pretty sure I use some words that most parents might not want their 8-year-old seeing.
Fair.
As we have several times on stream. Don't pretend to be offended, Rachel.
Like you don't have to be an expert. Like that comes with time and playing. When I first started DMing for kids, I had a very basic knowledge, and now I know a ridiculous amount about it just from like doing it over and over and over again. But you should have a basic understanding. You should be able to understand how to make a character sheet. There's guides online to help you do that. You should know when to make a perception check. Like, don't expect they're not going to know. You should understand those kind of things. How does advantage and disadvantage work? Like those kinds of things. You're going to basically be guiding kids in their understanding of the game. So while you don't need to be an expert, whatever you tell them is what they know about the game, right? But it's okay to still just have beginner's knowledge. Kids don't know. They're just happy to be there. So don't stress out about rules. Don't worry if you don't know something. You can BS it on the spot and look it up later until you're familiar with it. Like sometimes kids will say, "Can I do this?" And I'll be like, "Sure." Like it doesn't matter. Like you don't like try just not to worry so much about it. The rule books are a guide, like I said before. Like you decide how you want to use them, you decide how you want to build it. It doesn't matter if you don't do it correctly. Or correctly.
As I say, let's get air quotes around that correctly.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's really valuable. One thing that you kind of touched on this already, but just given the world, it's not like you're really going to be running D&D for your child and their neighborhood friends or anything, or a bunch of school friends, like over at your house for them right now. So you use Roll20 for like the dice and the maps?
Yep, and we use the cameras and the stuff as well. So like we use the Roll20 video because it's a lot easier than asking the kids
Yeah.
to also like get Discord or get Zoom and then have it up there. Like Roll20 has interface for cameras, so we use the cameras and the audio for Roll20. I build maps for it, and they use it to roll dice. There have been times where I stupidly left first because I'm like, okay, game's done, bye. And then I come back next time and I see in the chat that it says, so and so rolled 100,000 D100s, and it just shows all the things there and stuff. So they like to play with it and figure out things and draw on the map and other stuff like that. But it's a really good tool. Like it also, there's a learning curve and you need to learn how to do it, but I'm sure there can be a thing on how to use Roll20 here or something sometime.
Yeah. I was gonna say I've thought about that. I know our friend Elise has done that.
She's who taught me.
I was gonna
That's
say
why I know things about it.
And I know that Andy and I have both discovered this through painful trial and error.
Yeah. But it was like, it's super easy to learn. Like once Elise, she did it with me over Discord, and it was just like, okay, if you do this, here's how you say this part and do this thing and do this thing. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. It's pretty simple. And there's a whole lot of functionality that you don't need to know.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to use it all. It's fine.
And sometimes if you're me, you end up doing a live stream of D&D right after they did a function rollout that they didn't tell you about, that it broke all the lighting in your game.
Yeah, I remember that.
You
can also just like, if you don't want to do maps and you can do it over a phone call and just have Google roll stuff for you.
Yeah.
Just Google roll a d6 and it will roll one. Like it doesn't need to be needlessly complex. You can do it just by talking or by looking at each other. You don't need a map. Like I like to make them because it's fun for me, but like you don't need one. You can just talk it out and have Google roll stuff for you. Like it's super, it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah, awesome. One of the things we did was we asked in our Discord, which you can get to and get an invite link to with !Discord in the chat, as to just some questions of people of like, hey, what questions do you have about D&D for kids and how you would go about this? You are also more than welcome to post any questions that you have right now in Twitch chat. I might recommend you use the goat oats, the little channel points thing, in order to highlight them, just so I notice them better. Or just, I don't know, all caps the word question at the start of it. It's just, I do have stuff streaming by on my screens. And we're going to start with some questions from Discord anyway. Lena asked, and this was actually something that I was super interested in. How do you handle sort of more adult themes?
Oh, like death and violence and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, bad guys. Yeah. I mean, people doing bad things.
So with kids, with kids, I generally don't include death of anyone but monsters in my campaign. So like they'll fight a monster and they'll kill it. Bad guys are monsters. Like you could choose how you want to do it depending on if you want to have those discussions, but like monster death doesn't really phase kids generally. If they're fighting an orc, then it's not a big deal. Like often it's as soon as it's dead, it's, can I rip out the orc's tooth as a souvenir? Like the kids I'm playing with now are very much like, can I pry off its toenails and put it in a jar to keep? And it's just like, you can try, I guess. Roll a strength check or a dexterity check for me, I guess.
I'm deeply uncomfortable. Do you ask these questions about me?
Right. Every single thing that they kill, it's literally like, can I get some hair? Can I pull out a tooth? With one thing melted into a puddle, and it's like, is there glass around? Can I collect some of that into a puddle and put it into my bag? Like they just, when it comes to like that kind of stuff, most kids, like with violence and things like that, violence with monsters doesn't necessarily bother them because like they've seen Star Wars, they've seen whatever, like they've seen violence, they've seen fighting. Yeah, Minecraft, you fight. I mean, there's not like blood and viscera in Minecraft. Not that Star Wars has blood and viscera, but like,
it's the advantage of all the weapons auto-cauterize.
Right, exactly. But like, I generally also make all of my bad guys monsters. like just for ease of not having to run into that. Like if you feel comfortable with your group of kids, but the thing is I'm none of their parents, you know, and I didn't want it to be that they go home and then there's like, well, now my kids are afraid of politicians or now they're afraid of this. And I'm just like, sorry, you know, like I just if I make all the bad guys monsters, most of the, you know, the death is monsters, and they can handle that because it's been in their video games and their
They're afraid of
television and their
zombies. Well,
movies.
yeah,
And
no shit.
right. So that's pretty much how I handle that part.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think we talked a lot about this question actually in various places of how do you handle conflict among party members with kids, and does this differ from conflict adult party members in your experience? Because we kind of talked about, you know, the entire contract idea and just actively trying to get them to practice empathy. Do you have anything else in particular, maybe especially around that, anything that differs from adult party members?
Let me think. Or let me look through my crap. Let's see. How do you handle conflict among party members with kids? Sorry. Does this differ from conflict between adult party members in your experience? I mean, yeah, we touched on this a bit. A lot of it is just, like I said, communication and empathy. It's just like I try to be a mediator for that, you know, where I try to just do what I can to step in. Generally, the kids are gonna they're not gonna they can't fully separate. They're like, oh, it's just your character that did that to me. So sometimes it's like, if you did this, it's like, well, I'm mad at you now, and you have to talk about it a little and stuff like that. But like, as I said before, it's just dealing with kids. If you can mediate conflict with the kids that you're around, then you can mediate conflict in game.
I'm just going to sort of chuckle at this very long question of sometimes really long, from Sam in Discord, sometimes really tense moments can happen during these games, moments that the line between our characters and ourselves get blurred. As you just directly segued into this, do you find that instances like these happen more or less with younger audiences? And when they do, how do you navigate?
Yeah. So, like I said, for most kids, their characters are just an extension of themselves. So there are some slight differences, but generally they're role playing how they are, you know, because that's what they know. They just play like themselves, but maybe they'll have an accent, you know.
It's them, but outrageously French.
Yeah, no, I have one girl who does a crazy British accent for her character every time. It's great. But so unlike adults, there's not really as much of a worry about like blurring that line because it's already pretty fuzzy to begin with. So, like I said, as long as you could, your practice at dealing with kid emotions and squabbles and things like that in regular life, then it shouldn't be a problem. I usually say, like, you know, would your character do that, or is that what you would do, or these other characters are your traveling companions? Are you sure that you would want to leave them and go do this thing? And like, it's pretty easy to bring them back around. You know, I had one kid who always wanted to play different than what would fit, or always wanted to do his own thing, and was very like, I always know the right thing. But he was a paladin who served this god that was always to serve and help people. So I would just kind of gently remind him, like, hey, you're supposed to help people. Your goal is supposed to always be caring for those things, specifically from this. There will be consequences if you break off from that oath. And then he's just like, oh, you're right. And then he'll, like, you know, say and do it. So sometimes it's just reminding them of like, hey, you're a paladin who's supposed to always help people and be good. So maybe stealing from this person would be bad.
Just for some reason, something that you said reminded me of something from back in like the first campaign that I played, as the party was having like a 3-way disagreement about where we should go. Where one person was like, we should go on the road, another person was like, we should take the boat, and another person was like, well, yeah, but there was like this cave that I think had a legend of treasure in it, and like we should totally go check that out because it's like right over there, we can see it. And like I can't even remember all the dynamics, and it wasn't like getting anything too intense, but I just remember Andy, who was DMing, is like, yeah, all of a sudden you see this lion And we're like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna have some combat, and then I guess we'll resume, or maybe it'll push us some way. Like, and you see from out of the cave these massive, they maybe are spider legs, but they're like hooks, like reach out, grab the lion, and just pull it inside the cave. And I just remember like everyone stops, and I think we like all simultaneously like, so boat or road? And we need to pick one because we're not staying here like for 5 more minutes. God damn. Also, no, we are not going in the cave. The cave is bad. So that's always something I try to remember with, like, sometimes the DM can give them a little nudge of just like, hey, there might be some unpleasantness that way. Just a thought.
Yeah, I like that.
No, I just remember the image and all of us, like all of the players around the table, as we've just been having this, like, not argument, but sort of heated discussion. They're like, which way gets us away from here faster? Do we have to wait for the boat? Because if so, we're going on the road. Just, Jesus, get away. So I think we talked about this one a fair amount as well. But Sam asked in Discord, how do you encourage role-playing? Do you find children to be receptive of it?
Right. I mean, we did cover this a little bit, but yeah, or a little bit. I don't know. We covered it extensively, probably. But like I said, it starts with in-game chatting. So I try to give them someone they can talk to and interact with. I ask them questions. I prompt them to ask me questions. They'll play a lot off of me first. So if I'm not going to be doing a good job role playing, they're not going to engage as much. So you have to be willing to like play off of them and give them those moments. Like, a part of it is also the DM being able to role play. I also always prompt them to talk to each other. We mentioned a little bit like, oh, what would you guys talk about? Or so it's like, wow, you just killed an owl bear. What are you talking about? What you doing? And that just kind of like, right. Oh, they named the owl bear Diego. It is very much like, the owl bear came out. No, while they were fighting it, the owlbear's name was Diego, and then it was like, we must defeat Diego, and then they were like, can I steal Diego's beak? Can I just pry it off its head? And I'm just like, sure.
You got a knife?
Yep.
I'm just picturing...
Poor Diego.
I was going to say, I'm waiting for Lena's comment in the chat. Lena has a profound love of owlbears. I'm trying to see. It's on the far side of her desk. I bought her a small, like... It was like not the Funko Pop brand, but a similar thing of an owl bear.
If I had them with me, my friend Eileen, she taught me how to paint minis, and I have an absolutely amazing owl bear mini that she painted.
I love owl bears.
Yeah.
I love owl bears, but I was also traumatized by them because the first time that I ever came across them in D&D, Andy was like, a pack of 6 owl bears emerged from the woods. And then just like dropped in. By the way, with your nature stat, you know that they are not pack animals. They're solitary, so something really weird is happening. And we're like, oh, good. That's just a lot of owl and bear, and it shouldn't be. I love all of this. No, wait, it's the opposite. Sam, with Discord, with a really interesting question. What's the easiest thing for you as a DM when it comes to running games with kids, and what's the hardest?
The easiest thing for me is really just to play with them and have fun. Like, I know these kids really well. I've known them for 3 years now, and I've had them in class for 2 years. And these are kids that, like, I know extremely well, and they are very comfortable with me. So it's nice because they trust me to not, like, lead them into a bad situation or give them a bad time, And so it's really easy for me to just play with them and have fun and make jokes. And I like crafting puzzles and riddles for them and giving them new situations they need to think creatively in. The hardest part, I would say, is the same for any type of DMing, is that coming up with a cohesive story that has interesting characters and good combat and is compelling. Like, I spend much of my prep time is trying to figure out like how to give them something new and interesting. And for the most part, they're not going to complain. It's like, go fight this. And they're like, cool, yeah, got it. But like, as I've done it more and more, I've kind of, like this time around, I gave them a hero's journey. And like, like the first time I played with the group, I just did battle royale, like arena fighting. The second time it was like, okay, you have this quest, go do it. This time it's like, okay, you have this quest, go do it. They find it. I killed them all, but then saved them. I killed them all with an Oni. It was great. And then I saved them with, like a magical, like, and then you wake up here and this or that, and then gave them all of these, like, here are 4 items you need to go find, go on all of these quests, and then face it again, kind of a thing. So, like, it's super simple stuff, but it gives them this goal and stuff, and they've learned what it's like to die. Because we also then, really important, and I don't want to forget to mention this, talk about unconscious versus death with them before you knock them unconscious. Because when they go to 0 hit points, they're gonna think they're dead and they're gonna cry or get mad. So, like, have the conversation about 0 hit points and death saves and being able to come back and, like, those kinds of things, because otherwise it's going to be hard. But even when I killed all 4 of them, it was so great because it just kept it was like dominoes. Like, one of them went down and another one of them went down and then another one, and they were just like, oh, what are Miss Dorsey, you're evil, you're the devil. It's just like, so. But then it was great because then it was like, and then this happens, and they were just like, you're a monster. But they trust me, like, I've known them for long enough and built up to this that I really, like, they know I'm not going to be like, ha, you're dead, build new characters, suckers. You know what I mean? But yeah, to get back to the actual question, coming up with things to do is the hardest part. But I think it's the same hardest part as being a DM for anything,
So 2 things. 1, Sam or someone else in the Discord, I really need someone to put in helpful quotes. I killed them all with an Oni. It was great. Rachel Dorschner about 4 children as the caption to that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm,
I need that. And 2, I was just suddenly having flashbacks to Tyr, and I'm like, no, the hardest part for me is getting the party to, like, do something. As in that, my party was like, no, 2 of the party members were quasi-seriously having a discussion of, maybe we just stay in this abandoned place for, like, a couple of years, and then we'll go see it. And I'm like, I don't want to roleplay inane small talk between the 4 of you as the only existing people in this place for 2 years.
Yeah, that's not generally a problem with kids.
Yeah,
so
or then the fallback of their literal discussion of, which I think took 45 minutes, of how they were going to get to a place. And I'm like, oversea, land, I don't care. And then somebody, like, I can't remember who it was. I think it was someone in Twitch chat. It was actually like, do you have a teleportation circle? And they're like, oh, that's a really good idea. Do we have access to it? I'm like, if you had access to a teleportation circle, don't you think I would have mentioned it?
So generally, kids will hate that. So they won't do it. So you don't have to worry about them wasting a whole lot of time, because they're like, I'm done talking, let's go. Like,
so I should DM for more kids, is what?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
They're a little more plot and combat focused. They're going to keep going. They just want to get to the next thing.
100%. But it's like, it's great to, like, and don't think you need to be the perfect DM every time. Like I said, I just did an arena fight my first campaign because I didn't know what else to do. I gave them dumbed down versions of, like, a bullet and a beholder and stuff because they look cool. But, like, build up to it every time, like, a little bit more. And there's also stuff online. My second campaign I ever did, I Google searched for and found, like, a whole laid out thing and just changed some things that fit better for myself.
Nice.
So, like, don't think that you also need to come up with it all yourself either.
Yeah.
And it can also be, sometimes I do things where it's like, okay, you need to solve this riddle, or you're going to have to do this thing, and I still make them do the thing. Sometimes I still make them fight the bad guy even when they, like, solved a thing, because it's just like, yeah, sorry, sometimes it happens, like, you can do whatever you want.
Plus, they're going to enjoy fighting the bad. I mean, let's be fair. No, I think that's all really good advice. Sorry, I had a reaction as you were like, yeah, I just ran my first one with these kids, and I just, like, gave them a bullet and a beholder, and I didn't process the dumbed down version. I'm like, yeah. Wow, goddamn, that's actually sadistic. Like, I know you don't fully understand the rules of this. By the way, spellcasters, you do not exist anymore.
Right? Yeah, no, it was like there was no anti-magic cone, there was no anything. But then I also I gave them a red dragon and it was a young red dragon, but we said it was a teenage red dragon. So then they maybe do like an obnoxious Valley Girl teenage voice and one of them was like asking her to prom and it was just like it was a whole thing and they'll run with it if you give them a little bit sometimes, you know. So
I really
um,
wish that amongst like all the talent that we have at Helpful Goat, we had more people who do animation because I could use
mhm.
an animated campaign diary of some of the things you're describing. I just want a bunch of kids trying with one of them
Yeah.
trying to ask a young red dragon to prom
Hmm.
and just like
Hmm. He made his voice crack and everything too. It was really great.
okay, I'm just enjoying like the 10-year-old 16. There's just so much. There's so many levels of beauty working here.
Yeah, it was
Uh,
great.
Elise on Discord asks, "How have the kids surprised you while playing?" We keep hitting really good segues of like they just asked a dragon to prom.
Oh, I got more.
Oh, I'm sure you do, and I am
Uh,
leaning back and just enjoying this.
so like I mentioned, the last game that we played was the first game where like they didn't do a combat. I usually plan a combat for them every time, and I planned one for them this time. And for the first time ever, they talked their way out of it, and they role played the entire game. And I was like, and like I said, I've known them for 3 years. We've been playing this campaign since January, once a week. And it was the first time that they fully role played everything. And so I gave them a bridge troll. Like there was a bridge and there was a troll on it, and he gave them 3 riddles, and they had to pass the riddle. Like guess the riddles to do it. And in my notes, it even said if they get all the riddles right, accuse them of cheating and fight them anyway. Like because sometimes I'm just sadistic and mean that way with children. Um,
Also for helpful
force.
quotes.
Oh. So they're on their way right now to a village that's been overrun by goblins to try and, get this second relic that they need to defeat the Oni. Um, and they decided on their own, like I was like, right, you're walking, what are you talking about? And they've decided that they're going to try and trick the goblins and disguise themselves as goblins because they have, proficiency in disguise kits and other things like that. So they're talking about this, which I was already impressed with. They were trying to think of like, you know,
Tools and solutions.
tools and deceit and,
Yeah.
and doing that kind of thing just on their own without any prompting from me. And then they get to this bridge troll and he stops them, and I named him Trevor the Troll because they love silly things like that, like so much. They have a necklace that I gave them that protects them from being uh, possessed that I called Tim's shiny trinket, and it's their favorite thing, like because they just like things that sound silly and dumb. Especially in like a fantasy setting, they like things that sound like it shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
So there was Trevor the Troll. He gave them the riddles, and so they're trying to solve them and discussing them. And they get the first one and they do well. And our sorcerer decides that she's going to flirt with the troll. And this is an 11-year-old girl who's now flirting with me as a troll. And she's just like, the pickup line that she used was, "Well, I'm glad I remembered my library card because I'm going to check you out." And so like I have to react to this as a troll. And sure, like D&D trolls not actually going to give a fuck. But like she put in this effort to do this thing, so I was like, "Well, I'm going to have fun with this then." So I made him seem like really uncomfortable, and the monk just wasn't trusting any of it. And she was very much like, "All right, let's get to the next one." And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm in a hurry. My boss Tina under the bridge. I need to get to a meeting." And she's like, "Who's Tina? We need to meet Tina." And so like just really intense about it while the sorcerer is still flirting with him and saying all these like weird pickup lines at him continually, and he's starting to get like more and more flustered and uncomfortable while the monk is like, "I need to meet Tina," and the other ones are like, "We need to just go." And they get all 3 riddles. Like I was very impressed with them. They solved all 3 riddles, and then they start having this whole argument. And he's like, "All right, well, I guess I decided to let them go since they like befriended him and flirted with him and stuff." So I let them go, and they all are walking, and the monk is like, "No, we need to find Tina. I need to go under the bridge." And so they like grab the monk and are dragging her, across. And she's like, "Okay, can I break away and run back?" And I was like, "Sure." So I had her roll, like an athletics check or an acrobatics check, whatever. And she breaks away and runs back. And for the first time ever, the wizard just goes, "I cast hold person." And I was like, "What? You actually know your spells and you're using them?" Like without even. So she casts hold person and she fails the hold person. And then so she's like, frozen there. Oh, and I skipped the part.
Oh,
Sorry.
Lord.
Because they befriended this troll and they want to trick the goblins, they decided that they needed hair to look all, because I said he had matted hair and stuff all over. They needed hair to look the part of a goblin and stuff. So they asked the troll if they could shave his chest hair. So, and they passed a check and, convinced him to do it. So he's there with a dagger shaving his chest hair off as it's like raining down on them from above. And it's just, I'm like, okay, so you're now covered in troll chest hair, I guess. And they're like, all right, I start collecting it. And anyway, so she tries to escape. She casts hold person, and then she's like, how big can I cast my familiar? And I was like, why? She's like, well, I want to tie her to it. And I was like, okay. So you can cast like the biggest, fattest cat you can think of. And she's the monk is a halfling. So sure, let's just tie her to it while she's held. So like this whole time they actually were like playing their spells, and after Hold Person wore off, she cast Charm Person so she wouldn't struggle while she was tied to the familiar cat and walking away. And then after this happened, the monk she types into Roll20 chat, when I am free, I am going to punch you in the face. And it was just like, it was just so perfect. And it was so like troll flirting and shaving a troll's chest hair. And then like trying to meet his boss, Tina, who I just made up on the spot because I needed an excuse for him to leave. And she was like, I'm going to meet Tina under the bridge. And I was like, they're like, what if Tina's the Oni? And I was like, oh God.
There is no Tina. There is no under the bridge.
Yeah. But it was great because I didn't have to then like railroad them away from it. They were like, nope, hold person. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you know a non-combat spell.
I can't believe you didn't just fireball the monk.
Yeah. So like we've been playing for 5 months, and now like she knows her spells. She's using them without me telling her. They're role playing. Like, it takes time, but like they did this entire crazy interaction with literally like out any pushing from me at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was like we were all just dying, and the monk was just like, I'm going to punch you in the face. Like, you're going to regret this. And her eyes were wide, and they're all friends,
Yeah.
And she was just like, wait until I'm untied. You think you're going to be safe while you sleep tonight? It's like, oh, and that's where we stopped. And we haven't played for 2 weeks because I sprained my ankle the day we were supposed to play and other things. And so I was just like, oh God, I don't even know what to expect next time, but it's good times.
That sounds awesome. And that would also be, I would argue, one of the most rewarding things for me personally as a DM, of the party resolving a thing that could be in a combat encounter purely through roleplay.
Mm-hmm.
Especially weird roleplay.
Yeah, I love it and let them do that.
Yeah. I again, we've had a variety of instances where Andy will do things in games that I'm DMing, and I'm just like, yeah, sure, what the hell? Roll persuasion. Let's just see what happens. I mean, right. I have argued before that Stormbringer merely speaking to most enemies should inflict psychic damage. Because it is just like that's stupid, you're stupid, and your plan won't work. You're dumb. Yeah. I'm like, okay, there is no way that is not vicious mockery. That's better than most bards I've seen. God damn.
I will tell you that vicious mockery is one of their favorite spells too.
That makes total sense.
Chromatic orb, vicious mockery, and dissonant whispers are the top loved spells.
I did once roleplay use dissonant whispers, so I have a particular fondness for it to frame someone.
Oh, nice.
I had my character pop around a corner and like we were in the enemy camp and be like, no, I saw him conferring with the guards, and then as pointing at him cast dissonant whispers so that he screamed and ran away. And they're like, oh shit, this dude's onto something, knock him out, tie him up. You want a reward? Like, yes.
Nice.
Also to leave because I'm an enemy agent and I'd like to get out of this.
Nice. I like it.
At least also wanted to know, knowing what you know now, would you do the same things from the get-go or change it up if you were to start DMing another group of kids?
I mean, every single time I've started a new group, I've changed things. So this is my third group, like I've mentioned, though I've had one girl who has been in all 3 groups since the beginning. I always change things up. Like the papers that I showed here were just for this recent time that I did. I restructured everything to explain things well and do it out. Like, I think that I can always learn a little bit from it and what needs to do. I would say the next time I do it, I would probably talk even more on improv and role playing and try to do, maybe even some like improv warm up things to get them used to it and just to kind of get them more into that from the beginning. I think it's also, I would probably put a little bit more work into getting them to think about the type of character they really want to play, not just what sounds cool, but what they think they can do, you know? Um, and just sprinkle in more role play opportunities for them from the beginning to give them more of a chance to do that.
Yeah.
I think those would be the main things I would change.
Awesome. I'm going to read one last question from Discord, and you know which one it is. But I felt that it required an actual reading, not just displaying it on the screen.
Fair.
Let's see. Have you ever wanted to strangle one of the kids, but then realized that you can't? Because kids, shrug emoji, but then realized that you are the DM, and then created a monster to do it for you, asking for a friend. So, Chris, you can come check out Rachel's response to your question over on YouTube. With the video.
I haven't gone that far, but I have threatened them where I have said, listen, if you keep being mean and doing things that are frustrating to me, I can just drop a rock on you and you will die. Like, I have complete control over your life. Please don't forget that, because I will kill you. And that usually stops them. I don't pull it out all the time, but
this is very similar to I think it was Adam was asking me to originally explain what a session 0 was in the concept of overall D&D, and I'm like, so this is a good time to like establish tone, establish any boundaries or blah blah blah. And he's like, oh, okay, well, like, what do you mean like establish boundaries? I'm like so in session 0s I will say, if your character does one of the following things, I will instantly hit you with a level 99 fireball. I know that there is no such thing. You'll be dead. Don't cross certain lines. I don't think it needs saying to anyone here, but just as a warning, I can do.
Right.
I was like, hey, you know what Meteor looks like twin cast and upcast to level 15? There's no level 15. Mm-hmm. There is when I do it.
Yeah.
You cross these lines? There is now.
Right.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and actually that's a useful thing. Just remind them that sometimes there could be some consequences if they're being butts.
And then I did have a couple things that weren't mentioned in questions, if the questions were done, that I just wanted to make sure. I mean, I just want to reiterate, don't stress about the rules. Talk about death unconsciousness. I know I mentioned that, but it's really, really, really important. Also, like I said, have copies of their character sheets and all their things for yourself as well. Please adjust combat as you go. If they're level 2 and they're fighting some orcs and they look like they're gonna die, don't kill them. Don't TPK your party because the orcs are stronger than you thought they were. Just fudge some rolls. Don't add some numbers when you could. They're not watching you like a hawk that way.
The DM screen is there for a reason.
Mm-hmm. I do not let my kids be evil when we choose alignment. And the reasoning that I give is, you would have to be a very good role player where you would tell me why your evil character is traveling with these non-evil characters and working with them. Obviously, it's possible to do with adults and, those kinds of things to make them work out that way. But kids struggle with that. And I'm like, you can't be evil unless you can really, really, really sell it. And I don't believe that you can, So I would suggest the same for most people. Don't let your kids be evil. In life, do whatever you want.
I would also, just off the top of my head, feel like most kids, if they were like, oh, I'm going to be an evil character, have just firmly slotted themselves over into the chaotic evil in their definition of what that looks like. So it's like, I once tried to explain to someone why I wasn't going to let them play like a chaotic evil character. I'm like, yeah, lawful evil is like, you're an assassin. You progress, you follow rules. You might have a strict code of conduct about like, don't kill civilians. Chaotic evil is like, I want a sandwich, burn down a nursery. And I'm like,
yeah, sounds fair. But if kids want to be chaotic, let them be chaotic good or chaotic neutral.
Oh, yeah.
Because like that still allows for them to have that chaos element that quite a few of kids love.
Yeah.
I also want to say, make sure, we talked about it a little bit, make sure you make a balanced team. If you don't have a healer, that's bad. But that's why I always have them go through with the classes and start their top 3. And then we can kind of see, okay, who's actually interested in being support, who's actually interested in this, and then you can kind of, mix it. And then lastly, adjust what you want. You don't need to pick a background for them. You don't need to use sorcery points. You don't need to use spell slots. It doesn't matter. Like, if you don't know how sorcery points work, don't have your sorcerer have sorcery points. They don't know. You don't know. It's fine. Like, it just feel free to change whatever it is that makes sense to you. They're not going to be going home and going through the player's handbook and being like, well, actually, I should have this many rages per day, and you said that I could. Like, they're not. So, like, do what works for you, and they will be fine.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, and I think that you've also established really strongly throughout this book. Again, book it. Do what works for them. Like, do what works for the table. It's like, yeah, you don't want to have the kid have to track sorcery points. Be like, you can do these cool things to your spells. I find so often DMs can get a little bit hung up on the fairy of balance in D&D, where I'm like, there is literally a spell that lets me just change reality arbitrarily by saying it. We're not playing a balanced game.
Right.
I can just be like, gravity's reversed. I don't mean the spell reverse gravity. I wish gravity was reversed. It's not changing anymore. It's everywhere. Right. Like, yeah, this is...
And I use sorcery points now, and I use backgrounds now, and I use those kind of things because this is my 3rd campaign, and because I know these kids well. Yeah. So I knew how to explain it and how to incorporate it. But for the first 2 times I played, I didn't use those things at all. I just didn't.
Yeah.
So, like, you can make it work however works best for you.
Yeah. Awesome.
And in the documents, I put in 4 examples of, I put in my current one, so I think they're level 4 right now. I put in 4 examples of character sheets and 3 examples of spell sheets.
I opened the Sorcerer.
Oh, yay. Yeah, that's Ivel, the Sorcerer. So like on the, on the bottom right-hand side where all their skills are, I just try and put it in like super small, easy bulleted points. And that is easy for them. And if you wanted to open up the spell one too, that's where I actually put in the effort to rewrite everything.
Nice.
I don't know.
It's open.
Which spell one?
I opened Sorcerer again. I just paired them.
Okay, let me pull that up. But yeah, like I write, I at the very top, I have their spell save DC, I have their attack modifier, so it's right there at the top, easy to see. I do things in order, cantrips, I say, how long they are, and then I just write out exactly what's happened. You create a ghastly hand within 120 feet of you at a creature. Make a ranged spell attack. If it hits, they take this damage. That's it. Some of it is like, make a ranged spell attack, and if they do this, then you kiss their grandma and you do this thing. Like, it's always some random crap. Like, the spells are so needlessly complex. So just write out simplified versions for the kids. That's all that matters.
And often arbitrarily written, as Lena will often point out, of like, there are 2 ways of reading this sentence. Like, there is no rules as written.
And like for spell slots, just next to where it says 1st level spells or 2nd level spells, I just put little boxes and they fill them in with a check mark when they've used a slot. They erase it when they rest. It's super easy to track. And I
see you did pay attention to. Magic.
Yeah, I do that for I did that for her sorcery points for her meta magic, so she can like decide. So we went over when she leveled up which metamagic option she wanted. And then like here, but I just remind her when she casts a spell, I just say, okay, remember to check off your first level spell. And be like, oh yeah, right. And they just check it off. I waited a while to introduce this stuff, but now that I have, it's very easy for them to track. But these are my 11-year-olds. I don't know if the 8-year-olds would have, when they were 8, it might have still been too much for them, So just see how it feels. But like, they don't need to know all of these crazy things. They just need to know that they shoot fire out of their hands to somebody 120 feet away. How do you hit? What damage does it do? That's all that matters.
This is music to Lena's ear. That's just all she wants to know is you shoot fire out of your hands at 20 feet away.
Yeah.
And I think that the other thing, just again, I think an underlying point that you've made that's probably worth remembering for people who are trying to build up to this. Probably when in doubt, go smaller rather than bigger. Mm-hmm. Because that will keep them from bouncing off of the complexity. Like, if you're not sure that they're ready for spell slots, do it without spell slots. You can always add them next time or add them in as you're going. But if you put them in from the beginning and it's too much for them, they're just going to go.
Right. So like Scorching Ray, or not Scorching Ray, that's a big one. But like something like, I don't know, Mage Armor. It's like, yeah, you can cast that as many times as you want. Something like Chromatic Orb. It was like, you can do this 2 times per long rest. Like just make it work however makes sense to you and whatever works for the kids. Yeah. Like I've worked up to being able to use these things now because I understand them deeply. I didn't use spell slots until I understood spell slots, So like there's no right or wrong way to do it. Just make it, fit for the kids that you're working with.
Yeah. And I think that, again, you can always go back, you can change it, you can do it, but it's probably going to be better to add more complexity later on as everyone is more experienced than it's going to be to have too much complexity and lose the kid of I don't know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, because if you make it too hard too fast, you will lose them.
Yeah.
It is so much better to make it too easy, and if you see that they're getting bored, throw in something hard.
Yeah.
If you see that it's too easy, you can, create a monster on the spot to fight them or create some kind of something. Like, but if you make it too hard, they're going to think I can't do this, so I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
Plus, even like with teaching in general, when I teach math concepts and things, I always joke with the kids. So like, let's say I'm going to be teaching like 4-digit plus 4-digit addition, right? And we're stacking it or doing different kinds of things, and it's a little bit more complex. I always start out with what's 1 plus 1, because they can do it. Like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but like giving them a win makes them feel confident. So I'll always be like, okay, guys, I'm going to give you a really hard problem, and like you're going to struggle with it, and that's okay, because struggling is a part of learning, but like we're going to do this together. And then I'll write 1 plus 1, and they'll all be like, oh my god, I can't do it, it's so hard. Like they like to play into that crap, and then they'll put the answer up to 2, and then it'll be like, all right, what's 10 plus 10? Like ramping it up a little bit makes them feel like they feel that confidence, and that helps them to feel like, yeah, I can do this. And then you can give them the harder things.
Yeah. Because if you come at them with them cold, it's too much. It's intimidating. And the thing I was gonna say is, it seems to me in the back of my mind, mechanically as well, the joy of this is, if you want to add more complexity, like not just to a monster or something else, welcome to the joy of a level up. You can be like, hey, you're level 3 now. Now you have these things called spell slots, where it changes from this to that. And like, again, it's not like they're going to go into the player's handbook and be like, no, I've always had these. What the hell are you talking about?
I should have known about spell slots. Yeah, exactly. You can just level up and be like, you got this now.
Yeah, and that's actually, again, for some newer players, that's how I'd handled some things. I picked relatively straightforward classes for them, and I'm like, here are the only things you need to worry about. That is your sword. Here's how you hit something with your sword. Next level, I think for one of them, I actually introduced a fighter to first level abilities at second level. Like, you have a sword, here's how you hit people with your sword.
Right.
We're
hit,
good.
Attack, roll a d20, you're good.
Yeah. And like,
I always make sure to tell kids that want to choose spellcasters that the spellcasters are more complex than other classes. You will need to keep track of your spells and pay attention to those things. So you need to agree that that is something that you are interested in and can do.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll be like, no, I'll do something else, you know?
I also have a resource that's an entire like tier list of D&D classes, and this is intended for new players but who are adults, where I'm just like, here's what I recommend is super beginner friendly. Here is a thing that I do not recommend. Like, if you want to, yes, but it's not even I do or do not recommend. I'm like, here's the complexity level. Fighter, dead simple. Hit it with a piece of metal until it's dead. At the other end of this, allow me to present you with the hellscape that is a full preparation caster. If you've never played this, do you enjoy reading every druid spell in the book? If not, druid might not be the best choice right now.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
No,
I
it's a
can
good
give
way
you
to
a
put it.
spell list, but just so you know, these dudes just know all of them. They just change them.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's super fun. It's a blast.
Oh,
I'm not
I
shit talking.
also, I never do that. I give the kids spells. They do not prepare in the morning because it's just like, it's a needless complexity that they will literally never use as children.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
I have found. When they level up, I will look over the spells that they've actually cast, and I might replace something if they never use it and give them something different. But like morning preparation is just personally, I don't do that with kids because I don't even like it for adults, to be fair.
I love it because I love getting to switch out my spells. Like I'm currently playing the Keck, and I'm like, oh yeah, this makes total sense for me.
Right.
Massive strategist, and okay, how can I control this? And I love crowd control and stuff in games. And I'm like, yeah, this is like a dream class for me. I don't know why I haven't done this before, but yeah, no, I think I did have a player who was brand spanking new, and they really wanted to play a druid because they loved the idea of druidic magic. I'm like, here's my deal with you. I gave you like a scan of the player's handbook. Ignore basically everything about spellcasting because we're doing a one shot. You have never played this before.
No,
I am
yeah.
going to pick your spell list, and I'm going to do it, quite honestly, in a way that I know it will give you tools to deal with what I'm going to throw at you. I'd rather you got to feel powerful and cool, which druids freaking are, than like, oh shit, if only I'd pick this, if only I'd pick this.
Right.
Which can be super frustrating. So, thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on and talking with us about all this, providing us with all of these really wonderful resources. I have just dropped in the chat, completely screwed up the timing of it. I should have talked about it first and then posted it because there's I just posted again the link to this Google Drive. All the files that you have seen today are up there. Thank you so much. Rachel produced all of them except I think like a character sheet, which is a handout from D&D. She did not produce something that looks suspiciously like the official D&D character sheet.
It didn't, but the race and class thing I made myself from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Thank you so much for sharing that with the community. We really hope you enjoyed this. I had a great so much for being on, spending this time with us.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'm really glad I could be here.
So just a quick reminder, we are Helpful Goat Gaming. We are a game design and content, game content group. We love our community. We love getting to interact with you all. If you use the command !Discord, you can join our Discord where we have lots of talks about this, and you can discover all of Rachel's nicknames. I'm not going to say them. You can just find them out if you go to the Discord.
I have a lot.
We are affiliate here on Twitch, which means that you can follow, cheer bits for us, or subscribe to us. Both of those last two support us monetarily, which we would immensely appreciate. You can also use the command !Donate in chat, which will give you a link to our Ko-fi page, ko-fi.com/helpful. If you are so motivated and tremendous, see any support. But more importantly, we tremendously appreciate any form of support. Hanging out with us here in the evening, posting questions, hanging out in chat, chatting with us. We have 2 podcasts of actual play D&D or other RPGs. One of them is Goats and Dragons. That's our long. That also includes episodes that we've done so far. Dominic Monaghan. It's a lot of fun. And the other is Helpful Goat Presents, which has a lot of shorter form. I've mentioned at least a few times tier offhand. Those campaigns are there. A lot of the DM. You can also find links to all of those down below if you're watching us on Twitch, for wherever you get your podcasts, Stitcher, Google, Apple. We'd appreciate a subscribe to that, leaving us a. All of that really helps us. We love doing. We love getting to out. We love getting to ask amazing people, Rachel, to share their and put this out for people. These wonderful, and we love being able to do more of it and all of this. And as I say that, Ghost Trip is now following. Thank you so much, Ghost. From all of us here at Helpful Goat Gaming, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, all of you, for watching and tuning in. We hope you. Fine, I'm fine. Hitting the outro like a professional, it's fine. We hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe. Be well. Love y'all. Good night.